If you've watched many of my videos, you know I tend to believe that you should be a moderate. I tend to see myself as a moderate, probably a bit of a mix between being a conservative and being liberal, because I think there's a lot of value in a progressive liberal worldview, and there's also value in tradition. And it's been said that young people challenge everything, they question everything, and they have no sense of tradition, while older people know only tradition and they don't question anything. And that's often true. We see perhaps the older established crowd saying that we need to go back to the good old days. We need to return to old times of glory, which were lost. And then there's young people who are saying, no, we need a new deal that's going to go counter to the established culture. And that's not new. It's probably ingrained in the DNA of what it means to be young and old. Older people have a hard time adjusting to change. Young people feel like change is the water that they swim in. So that's not a surprise. But there is such a thing as wisdom, and that can be something that applies to anyone. Anyone can choose to entertain a pragmatic spirit of wisdom and truth and a capacity to be fair and balanced. I was looking at watching a Trump rally, and Donald Trump was in Bozeman, Montana last night. I actually wanted to go, but I was in Kalispell doing something for work, and he was going to be in Bozeman. And then I got back home in Helena around 6 in the evening, and that rally was supposed to start at 8. So I thought, well, there's not really any way I'm going to be able to drive another hour and a half to Bozeman after being at work all day and then still get there in time. And I don't know, maybe I could have got there and got in, but I just felt like, you know what, the timing just was not working out. So I did stay home, but I watched the entirety of the rally from home because you can watch it on YouTube after all. Interestingly, I probably got a better view of it on YouTube than I would have gotten if I was actually there, which is kind of funny. But there is something to be said for the experience of going and being part of something like that and seeing all the people and the music and the hype and the pomp and circumstance and all of that. But despite the fact that I lean toward being more pro-Trump than pro-Democratic ticket, I also think about how on both sides of the aisle, there's this tendency for people to make a caricature out of themselves. You have people who are just kind of like the textbook conservative. God, guns, and a lot of flag waving, you know? And you look at these people and you think, yeah, I can see exactly what kind of people you are. As a general rule, you know, gun-loving people who are the epitome of red-blooded Americans, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. I like it to a point. But in a way, it's kind of just like the conservative version of the pink-haired, gender-neutral person who's raging on the left. You know, like there's these silos people get into. And then all you have to do is take a look at them, and you can pretty much tell what bucket they fall in. Because they're wearing the colors, you know? It's like a joke. It's like if you go to the Seahawks game and you have the 49ers and the Seahawks playing against each other, you're going to see one group of people and you're going to know that those are the 49ers because they're all waving 49ers flags and they're wearing red. And then you're going to know who's the Seahawks fans because they're going to be wearing the, you know, whatever green color the Seahawks is, blue and green, and they're going to have their 12th man flags or whatever, right? So, like, you just know what they stand for because of the flag they're waving. Now, I will say there's something a little bit offsetting about the Democratic ticket these days, because the crazy thing is, you go to a conservative rally, like a Trump rally, and you see a bunch of people trying to show the American flag, because that's what it's about, right? Like they're going to an American political event because they are proud of their country and they are interested in the future of their country, so they're showing the colors of their nation. And then you look at the Democratic stuff, and it's almost like they're embarrassed to show the colors of their own country. So it's kind of like a shame thing, I guess. But I can't help wondering, like, if you are embarrassed about the concept, not of the direction your country is going, but about the actual concept of your country existing, then how are you in a good position to be determining the future course of your nation? You know, like, that's one thing I just got to give to the conservatives. At least they believe that their country should exist. And I don't know that I could necessarily say that about the liberals, because the liberals they seem to have the attitude that they think that America is an embarrassment. They think that American exceptionalism is offensive. They don't really like the idea of a strong, patriotic, and culturally distinct United States. And so they kind of almost campaign against their own existence. That's how it feels. And I don't think it always used to be that way. I think there was a time, like maybe back in the Bill Clinton era and before, when the Democrats were more about advocating for the working class. They were about maybe supporting labor. They were about probably more services and higher taxes, stuff like that, but they were ultimately still patriotic. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a flag on your front porch kind of people. But now the people on the left, they almost seem to think that the flag of the United States is itself a conservative symbol, which they're not sure that they want to align with, which I think that's ridiculous. But I also think it's ridiculous if you're a 300-pound guy that can barely get off the couch, and you're hoarding ammunition, and you're buying guns, and you're putting them in your basement because you're going to be ready when the Illuminati comes to take over. You know, pry these guns from my cold, dead hands, right? Okay. I mean, like, the most strenuous thing you've done in the last decade of your life is to get up and go adjust the TV remote. So I guess I have a hard time seeing that your interest in being a revolutionary is all that much, you know? And so does it really make a difference? Does it make a difference if you're the 300-pound porker sitting on the couch with a bunch of ammo, thinking that you're going to be the next revolutionary when Civil War breaks out, or if you are some sort of a confused person with pink hair that's running around raging against tradition and trying to be the champion of the progressive left. It really doesn't make a difference. In both cases, it's a person who is very much just a caricature, the cartoon version of something, wearing the colors, waving the flag, and not really having any identity other than just aligning with some sort of branding. And I think you probably shouldn't be so much in one particular camp in life that people can just see what you believe by taking a glance at you. If that's what it comes down to, and you are so defined by outward appearances that align you with a specific ideology, you're probably imbalanced, and your perspectives are probably a little bit extreme, whether you're on the right or the left. We really need, if we need anything, to move toward an era of moderate dialogue, moderate politics, moderate perspectives. We need to be the sort of a society where people can have different perspectives on things and still believe that those different perspectives should exist and have a right to exist. And as long as people think that the purpose of life is to rally around shutting down the other side, not reaching across the aisle, not making any compromises, and taking pride in mocking perspectives which differ from their own, then there really isn't any difference between our national politics and a football game. And that's really all it is. Because if you look at it, the average American probably interacts with politics in approximately the same way they interact with their favorite sports team. They talk about it on social media. They make friends based on the common interest of aligning with one particular side. They don't really focus on any fundamentals of what actually makes them different from the other meaningfully, and mostly just essentially take pride in essentially bashing somebody else. There are things that matter. I think that being able to have personal liberties matters. I think sustainability matters. I think that people should be able to work for things and keep the things that they spend their life working to earn. Overall, I think a free market capitalist system works better than a more socialist style of economy. But by the same measure, we don't need to live in a world where if you forget to pay the light bill for your piece of road, the county turns off the lights or doesn't maintain that street in front of your house. We don't want to live in a society where if somebody's got no insurance, we just leave them to die in the street. You see, so even if you make a case for all of the benefits of a more conservative approach, there's also something to be said for the fact that we don't want to go ditch to ditch. We want a mix between those two different ideas of control and liberty, and balance between services and freedoms. But we can't really have a good culture in our society if we don't believe that the other side should exist. If we believe that we should just take a side and then try to keep on going as far to our side as possible in hopes that eventually the other side won't exist anymore. Like, that's not a good way to look at this. And I think a lot of people are just really making a joke out of themselves these days. And then that creates problems on both sides. Both sides. Spirit of liberty is a spirit that's not too sure that it's right. I love that quote by Judge Learned Hand. He said that, and it's so true. When you think you know everything, you probably don't. And someone who's truly moderate, someone who's truly got wisdom, you know, you're probably not going to know necessarily what they stand for. You might have an idea. But somebody who can see both sides of an argument, well, they're not going to be out there acting like a clown. They're going to look at both sides, and they're going to see the validity in both sides, and they'll show some reservation. It's so easy to just make fun of other people. Politicians do it. Everybody does it. I've been guilty of it. So easy to just jump on the bandwagon of us versus them, whatever it might be. But the reality is there's two sides to every story. And on both sides of the aisle, people with good intentions do bad things. I was just finishing the main story quest for Western Skyrim here in ESO. Finished it a little while ago. And the High King in Solitude turns out to be the bad guy, because he's eventually become corrupted. And then he starts essentially selling his soul to the devil to be powerful. And the thing about it is, he probably wasn't always evil. You know, he wasn't necessarily a bad guy to begin with, right? But eventually, instead of focusing on serving his country, he focused on serving himself. And I think it's interesting how, when I look at people's lives, people who I know, people who I have known, it's interesting how so many people start off potentially intending to be good people. Maybe they're foolish, maybe they're undisciplined, maybe they make bad choices. But there's a point when people get settled in their ways and they slowly evolve from just being foolish or stupid or unwise. They slowly become evil. They become that person who says one thing but does another. The person who is established in their ways. The person who has access to wisdom, who has a capacity for wisdom. And they also have a tendency to say good things, but they speak with a forked tongue. And for every good intention they have, they wind up taking a few steps back toward being a person who's more interested in power than in service. We don't really realize when we start to take steps toward becoming corrupted, because they're small steps. It's just eventually you look at somebody, you realize that maybe they've gotten some degree of power or authority or influence or success, but they're not the person they used to be. They've changed. They've given up their wide-eyed sense of faith and optimism. They've given up their tendency to believe in others. They've become cynical, rigid, and old. And that's not really so much about physical age as much as it is mindset. It's very important for us to not be too sure that we're the good guys, I think. Now, you do want to believe in something. You want to take a side. You want to take a position. You want to have some conviction. Don't get me wrong. But you shouldn't be so convinced that you're on the right side of things that you do evil in the name of good because you think that you can do no wrong. I really believe that the people who do the most harm are often the people who've had harm done to them. People who were abused are more likely to abuse people in their care. People who see themselves as victims are more likely to victimize others. Because they don't see themselves as capable of doing evil. They see evil as something that somebody else does. But they have an excuse. They have a reason. They're too busy feeling sorry for themselves to realize that they're doing harm to others as some sort of a trauma response to their own bad experiences in the past. But it really doesn't matter if you're a victim of something in the past. When you're a grown adult person today, you have all of the tools and resources to be able to choose wisdom and patience, to be graceful and to be kind. You choose to go put your ego first and rage at other people who are different than you. There really is no excuse. There is no excuse because it's just like if I had something bad to me done to me when I was a child, you know? Like, I definitely relate to having a strange childhood, which very much affected the way my life turned out. But I also understand today I cannot look at my past and say, well, you know, I am what I am today because of what happened before. To a point, that's kind of true. But it's also true that I am who I am today because that's what I allow in my life. That's the choice that I make. So if I have a bad attitude, I can't blame my mother 20 years ago for my bad attitude this afternoon. There is a point where we can't blame other people for our situations, and we have to just take ownership of it and accept that it's our responsibility to find peace in our life. And there are some people who always have peace in their life. There's some people who never do. There's some people who always feel like life is enough as it is, and there's some people who never feel like life is enough as it is. There's some people who believe that life is foundationally a good thing, and there's some people who always believe that life is filled with problems, and it's something that we have to spend fighting to protect. Sometimes we do have to fight for things. Sometimes life brings us challenges. But when we live in an environment of blessings, relative peace, relative prosperity, and we spend our time being angry at things, chances are that's on us. Being moderate is about picking a middle way that doesn't necessarily impress or disappoint too much. It doesn't get you any awards. It doesn't make anyone impressed with you. It doesn't make anyone want to stand up and cheer. But when you're moderate, You have the ability to step back, to look at other people and see their folly, to look at yourself sometimes and see your own folly, to challenge yourself to make tomorrow better than today, to see the good in other people even when you disagree with them, to take something from both sides of every argument which you can make your own. Look at the political landscape and you'll see that there's a divide between urban America and rural America, between old and young, between property owners and property renters. There's divides between working class industry and technology-driven intellectual property. There's all sorts of divides between people who ultimately need each other in order to survive. Imagine the folly of men who say that women are somehow less important or less qualified than they are. Or women who say they don't need men. The fact is, people are different. Everyone is different. Everyone serves a different place in that circle of life. We need a world filled with men and women, liberals and conservatives, people who build houses and people who program games. All of those different polar opposites, Republicans and Democrats, even the dramatic differences between countries which exist around the world. We don't need to create a homogenized society where everyone agrees. What we need is not for everyone to believe that they share a common destiny, because that's just not possible. People are naturally going to be polarized. They're naturally going to cause trouble. But we need enough people with a voice, with influence, to choose to be rational peacemakers who are pragmatic enough to see that perspectives which differ from their own have value and merit. We need people who are capable of having the courage to take a stand when they believe that they're right, and also the bravery to change their mind when they're presented with an idea which is more right than their own. And if we could do that, you don't need everyone to be a moderate. There's going to be people cheering at the far extreme right and left, as long as there is a right and a left. But we need at least enough of a minority to gain dominance who is moderate, to ensure that there is a balance between those two extremes. And I think that that's important. It's kind of like the yin-yang symbol. There's the black and there's the white, and then there's the two little dots that are kind of in the middle, offsetting each other. Somebody has to be a true neutral. Not true neutral in the sense that they have no opinion at all, but true neutral in the sense that they see value in both sides of every argument. There's nothing wrong with having a private opinion. There's nothing wrong with being a little bit ambiguous. Doesn't mean you don't have opinions. I do have opinions. I do have all sorts of things which I think are fascinating, which I take interest in. I have my thoughts on things. But I always look at the tribal people who are really, really gung-ho about something, and I think, man, I do not align with that. Because I am not going to stand there and tell you that you are 100% accurate. I'm not even going to tell you that I am, because there's so much complexity in life, in society, in politics, in everything. You can't go out there and pick the right side, because everyone has something valid to bring to the table. And that should be the spirit of our politics. It should be the spirit driving our underlying society. The main part of our society should be moderate. But I guess I'll close with this thought. There really are two different kinds of true neutral. There is the true neutral, which believes there should be balance between conflicting ideas because they each have valuable things which they bring to the table. And then there's the true neutral, which just doesn't care. The true neutral that shrugs its shoulders and leaves its mouth hanging open and has no opinion about anything. There's the true neutral of balance, and there's the true neutral of death. Because a person who's dead doesn't have an opinion. They don't take one side or the other. They're just dead. We don't need a society of dead people. We don't need to be neutral just because we don't think at all. And I think there is a problem with that in our society, because more than ever before, we live in a time when it's very easy to just spend your life scrolling through Facebook and TikTok and whatever else fancies you, and never really have any firm opinion about anything. It's important for us to think. And I won't tell you what you should think about or what your conclusions should be, but you should think about the different things that are going on in the world. You should contemplate them, and you should form some sort of an opinion about what exactly you believe is right. You should be involved in some level. Maybe not out in the streets rallying or waving a flag or anything like that, but involved enough that you do have an opinion. Driven by a sense of stewardship, the belief that somehow you owe it to yourself and others to make the world a better place, to leave it better than you found it, and to pay forward the blessings which you have been given in your life. Till next time, as always, thanks for watching.